Take it wherever you want, Chamath.
I'll say three things. Stan Druckenmiller has this very useful comment about stocks, which is when you buy it today, you're trying to buy what that company is going to look like in 18 months from now. And what it's doing today doesn't matter. The thing about earnings and P&Ls and quarterly reporting is that it's looking backwards and it's trying to give you a sense of what happened, not what will happen. So I think there are three critical things about what will happen that I think are important with respect to Tesla. The first is at the foundational technology layer. And Nick, I sent you this tweet, but it's what he said about AI5. I've made these comments before, but he had these multiple efforts with Dojo and other stuff that he merged into one unit. And the quote is pretty incredible. We're going to focus TSMC and Samsung on AI5. The chip design is an amazing design. I've spent almost every weekend the last few months with the chip design on AI5. By some metrics, it will be 40x better than AI4. We have a detailed understanding of the entire stack. With AI5, we deleted the legacy GPU. It basically is a GPU. We also deleted the image signal processor. This is a beautiful chip. I poured so much life energy into this personally. It will be a real winner. Why is AI5 so important? What AI5 is the building block of a system that I think you'll start to see, not just in the Cybercabs, but also in Optimus. So from a functional technology perspective, there's been a leap, and that leap is going to come into the market. That was the first thing he said, which I thought was really important. The second thing was what he said about his energy business, which I think is the critical adjunct to believe robotics and autonomous cars. If robotics and autonomous cars work, what you really need is an energy business beside it that is humming and on all cylinders. Why? It's how you make LFP battery cam that will be the limiter. Energy will be the limiter. But what he's showing, and Nick, I sent you this tweet, is that business is just on a tear. It's printing $3.5 billion a quarter, and its operating margins, an energy business, 30%. And so what you're going to see are battery packs of all shapes and sizes, the huge battery systems that's going to go into data centers, but then all the way down, I think, to the small LFP cam that he's going to need to power all these things. And then the third thing is his comments on Cybercab, which is that this thing is just going to be a shockwave. So I read all of those things and I was very bullish. I think that he is humming on all cylinders on the critical layers of the stack that he needs to build this next version of Tesla. My concern, I think there's a real concern that I have that this vote is going to go down to the wire. I think that ISS and Glass Lewis, I think that these organizations are pretty broken. I think the way that they make decisions are hard to justify. An example of this, they asked to vote down Ira Ehrenpreis as a director of Tesla because he didn't meet the gender components, but then they wouldn't vote in favor of Kathleen Wilson-Thompson, even though she does technically meet the gender requirements. So it's very confusing where ISS and Glass Lewis are coming from. So I think there's a risk that this package gets voted down.
Can I just shine a spotlight on one of those points that you made with these proxy advisory services? So I think for years, people have wondering, why did corporate America go so woke, especially in the early 2020s, where they created all these DEI departments and, they didn't have to do that. And a big part of the reason is that those initiatives came from Glass Lewis and ISS. I think Elon's jokingly called ISS ISIS. But basically what happens is they make recommendations for how shareholders should vote on different resolutions. And the index funds basically just defer to them for whatever they should do. So they effectively control or almost control the voting for all of these board level resolutions that every public company has to make. And so they've been the ones who've been imposing all these DEI requirements, all these ESG requirements, if you're wondering where those things came from, because just these two companies, which no one's ever heard of, they were captured a long time ago, meaning they were captured by the woke crowd years ago. And so this has really been the root of why corporate America has gone woke for a long time. And look, there's also pressure from the outside, from boycotts, or, there's some pressure sometimes from employees and that kind of thing. But a lot of it came from these two companies that no one's ever heard of. And I think it would be a good idea for someone to take a look at this and figure out what happened. Maybe someone like Chris Rufo should investigate what was the impact of Glass Lewis and ISIS on corporate America going full woke for so many years. Because it certainly didn't help corporate profits.
It didn't help profits, and they don't have logical explanations for a lot of their decisions.
Yeah, and why aren't there active investors or active managers in these passive groups who would make a decision on these things?
They're too small. The banks call me every week, and one of the things that I get is sort of like, they tell me like, hey, here are the big trades, here's the flow, here's, if you want to be in market, here's what I recommend. That's what they're telling me. One of the things they told me this week, which I thought was really shocking, is there's so few active managers left. It's so overwhelmingly passive money. The next largest group is now retail. And so what a lot of these professional money managers do now is they basically wait to see where retail is going and they follow them. So there isn't the people with a diversified asset base to be able to stand up and say, I don't think what ISS and Glass Lewis are doing is right. And so what happens is they kind of, Sack says, they can just kind of run amok, and they build a very healthy business being this interloper to provide opinions. It's not clear where their opinions come from. It's not clear what they're rooted in. It's not clear that there's a way to adjudicate and go back to them and say, well, you got this wrong. It's just not clear. But, they probably make a very healthy margin doing it. And everybody, as Sack says, just kind of turns over responsibility to them.
It is an interesting fact that we kind of just say, hey, the guys who are the actual custodians of the shares don't have to do the job of holding the shares. Like, the job of being the holder of the shares is to vote the shares. That's all there is to do as a shareholder. You cast your vote. And these guys
abstained. They could also abstain, right?
Yeah, and these guys are getting paid a fee to actually do that work, which is, call it 0.5% or 0.25% or 0.1% of the assets that they hold. So, like, what are the people they're doing? If it's all automated trading, why aren't they just...
Well, I don't know if you guys own a lot of equities, but just to give you a sense, there's people that manage the stocks, right? There's people that transfer the stocks. There's people that then give you a recommendation on how to vote the stock. Then there's people that hold a virtual representation of that stock. Then there are people that transfer that virtual representation.
And they will not stop calling.
So the point is, like, we have so financialized everything that there are billion-dollar businesses that sit at every single step of the way. And to your point, Freeberg, I think this is where...
No one's actually a shareholder.
The tokenization of stocks may be a really good thing because it'll put the responsibility back into the owner of the stock, because the wallet will centralize all that activity because you won't need to have all this other stuff.
I have been getting phone calls from Investco, QQQ, because I own a bunch of QQQ and some accounts or whatever. And they were calling 3 times a day for I don't pick up my phone. Who's calling me on the phone? Unless it's one of you four. It's calling me to say goodnight. I don't. That's the only time I pick up. It's when, and so I finally pick up and they're like, hey, we need you to vote. I'm like, yeah, I'm not voting. I don't know who you are. They're like, well, let us explain to you how to vote. And I'm like, I don't want to vote my shares. I just want to own QQQ. I'm good. You guys handle it.
Some of this infrastructure is so decrepit and old, like trying to get shares, for example, that you've bought in the private markets when a company goes public, just getting them registered and transferred in the position to be sold can sometimes take 3 or 4 weeks. Can you imagine? The markets move an entire order of magnitude in 3 or 4 weeks. It's crazy.
Here's Elon's pay package milestones. Market value, $2 trillion. I think they're at 1.4 trillion right now, something around there. Operational milestone, 20 million vehicles delivered. And then you just go right down to 6.5 trillion. But on the operational milestones, 10 million active FSD subscriptions, which they're far away from right now. And 20 million vehicles, I think they've delivered 6 or 7. 1 million robots delivered. 1 million robotaxis in commercial operation. Those are big numbers. 50 billion adjusted EBITDA, and then straight down the line to 400 billion EBITDA. If you were to look at this Optimus business, just back of the envelope, these robots are going to go for 20K, he said, ultimately. Maybe they're 30. They'll probably have a 30% margin like the cars do or something similar. You'll make a little bit off the software stack. And if you were to if every millionaire owned one of these, or They took some number of the jobs. The TAM for this just in
I
the
don't
United
think
States
this is where it's going to go. I don't think
is going to
this is
be
where.
huge. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars.
If I had to bet, I think a very fun poly market is where do the first million robots go? I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that these robots go to Mars. I don't think they're going to.
Oh, wow.
They'll be in the Tesla
So
factories.
SpaceX buys
obviously.
them and sends them to Mars. Yeah.
How else are you going to get a fleet of the
Or they'll go
workforce?
into the mines. I think they're going to mine.
They could go to the mines.
Coal. Send them in to get that clean, beautiful coal. Oh, so clean, so beautiful. We could send those Optimus
Well, it's not
robots
coal,
in
Jake
together.
Al. It's the fact that our mining is really limited by the human exposure from the pressure and the heat. If we can mine slightly below the area that we mine as our maximum depth today, it would unlock an extraordinary supply of minerals that we can't access today. And so automation,
obviously.
yeah.
And you don't want to figure out like how to create potable water and breathing mechanisms on Mars for the first 5 years. Send robots. Guess what? They don't need to eat or breathe or pee or poop.
And they can get charged with solar.
And
right
that
there.
may
They
sound
can build solar.
like a really stupid thing to say, but it becomes a huge amount of infrastructure that you otherwise wouldn't need to build on.
That's right. They just got to power up. You just got to give them a plug.
Just a couple of solar panels
And by the way,
batteries.
guess who makes those batteries? Tesla.
Yeah.
And
It's all
guess who
coming
makes
together here.
Guess who makes the brain? Tesla.
On cars, but I'm curious if we're all sitting together 10 years from now, will we think of Tesla as a car company or will it be a robot company? Just even seeing Becky getting those gummies, being handed the gummies by
pretty cool.
Optimus, is that what it is? And how close are we to true dexterity? Because people always say that robots can do a lot, but they still can't fold laundry, for example.
Oh, well, Optimus can fold laundry. I've actually
I
been
would say
in the
it
lab.
was a pretty gentle grasp with the gummies that he could have squished, and once or twice he dropped him like he did just now, and he went back and picked him up carefully.
No,
It was
that's
pretty gentle.
exactly right. So I've been in the lab with Optimus. He can fold laundry. He can wipe the table down really well. He can hand things to you. You can actually shake hands with him. The tactile nature of his hand is actually really very good. And so
I wasn't supposed to touch it, but I did.
Yeah, you can. I mean, again, from a cautious perspective, we continue to make sure that people are cautious around him. But he also can dance. You've seen some videos. He's very mobile and very dexterous. He's walking around the offices in Palo Alto all the time. So I'm actually quite excited. But I think to answer your question, we're redefining what transportation is, but we're also redefining robotics and what AI brings to robotics and how versatile the robots will be in the future as well, Andrew.
In terms of, by the way, Elon's spending most of his time, it sounds like these days, on the robots themselves. I mean, that's where his focus is.
He's spending time on many different areas. On the earnings call, he even talked about the AI chips that he's been working on and the team are working on. Obviously, the software, we do have a few other vehicles coming out, so he spends time on that. He's spending time on everything across the board.
And then finally, because I got to ask you to weigh on it, we ask everybody, everyone talks about an AI bubble, whether there's a sort of, indiscriminate spending, almost too much spending in this space, and that it's going to catch up to us at some point. Where do you land on that topic?
Yeah, my view is that the technology of AI is truly transformative, and it will continue to be over the next decade or more in terms of what it's done. I was thinking about this yesterday. If you think about 100 years ago, where most houses didn't have electricity or had cars in the driveways, that to me is what's happening at this point. It's we're changing transportation with AI, and we're changing the way households will work and how workplaces will work with robotics, and I think that's incredibly exciting. And Tesla aims to be at the forefront of that.